Hi, my name is Timothy Conley. Art is dead, we killed it, and we'll never have enough water to wash away all its blood. And you're watching the Disney Channel. What the heck happened to movies? So in 2020, everything went down and it wasn't good. And then from then into now, it still hasn't been good and doesn't look like it's gonna get any better. What do you think of this angle? You like this? This is great. Love this. Beautiful. So I'm talking about three main things. First thing is going to be what happened in 2020 to theaters specifically. Then I'm going to talk about how audiences have changed over the past 3 years, and then how businesses and corporations have responded to that audience. And I think it's pretty interesting, especially when you look at it from an audience's perspective. I don't have a lot of experience in the film industry, but I have a ton of experience as an audience member, especially as a Gen Z guy. I'm new here and everybody's trying to figure out how to deal with me. So fun times. So there were a ton of headlines throughout 2020 basically saying movies are dead. Oh no, theaters are closing. Oh dear. But the numbers were actually that bad. It was pretty terrible. Ticket sales in general in 2020 dropped by 80%. That's a big number. That's a lot. AMC, the biggest chain of movie theaters that I know of, lost $4.6 billion in 2020. Billion with a B. They made in 2019, I believe, $5.5 billion, and then only made $1.2 billion in 2020, which, I mean, if you're making billions of dollars, you can't complain that much, but that much of a drop is still going to cause a lot of people to lose their jobs, and it's just not going to be pleasant all around. Why is my camera acting up there? Globally, not just AMC, in 2019, theatricals made $42.3 billion, which is a lot of money, and then we made $12 billion in 2020. Now again, that's billion with a B. That's a lot of money, but nonetheless, that's still a drop. Seeing how much of a drop, well, certain theaters that were considered major, like Regal Cinemas, filed for bankruptcy very recently. Regal had about $8.9 billion in debt. How the heck do you make how do you already make $1 billion annually, right? And then say that's bad when the 5 billion is your average. And then even if the 5 billion is your average, I know that's AMC's average, not Regal, but nonetheless, if Regal's still making the same as AMC with that 5 billion, they're almost they're like $9 billion in debt. How? Well, I think the answer to that question, how, is actually not directly from COVID. I think it's a longer problem that's been happening for a while, and a part of it is because of my generation. Me, people like me, the whole sphere. So theaters, they're going downhill, they're going bankrupt. It's not good. And it seems like most of the film industry and a lot of the internet are blaming Gen Z. But why? Well, the industry that is being boosted by Gen Z is video games, which are already a massive industry, larger than most. And it doesn't help that we were all stuck at home in 2020, and the only real media that we enjoyed having access to was long form media. And if you think movies are long, well, no, TV shows are longer, and most video games range from 10 to 20 hours worth of gameplay. And even then, some of them range up to 60 if you're willing to pay the money for it or do the extra things. You see a lot of traditional media really go after Gen Z, with places like the New York Post calling Gen Z a bunch of woke nihilists and other things. But to an extent, it is kind of true. We, Gen Z, enjoy watching YouTube videos or playing video games. And if we do watch a movie, we're going to stream it rather than go to the theater. The box office is much lower than it was in 2020. All those numbers I read off, they're worse now. It's almost 2023 and things aren't looking better. A great example of how Gen Z does like movies, but they're still not going to go to the theater, is Robert Eggers' The Northman. Robert Eggers has a huge fan base among Gen Z people, myself included. I love me some Robert Pattinson screaming. That's the whole sentence. That's all I gotta say. So when The Northman came out, there was a big buzz about it. Everybody thought it was gonna dominate the box office and be this next big thing, but it lost money. It didn't do well. When it finished its theatrical run, it went to streaming and exploded, and it made its budget back. The irony of all of this is that certain theaters are still technically making some money. They're not completely broken. If it was so bad, there wouldn't be any theaters at all. So it does make money. Well, action films. Not all action films though. Superhero films. DC and Marvel, and that's pretty much it. Even Star Wars has been a little scared to go back to the big screen by just focusing on Disney Plus. Especially after the failure of Solo, Disney has been very hesitant to do more standalone films with Star Wars because, again, we're not going to the movies. So if we're not going to the movies, where are we going? Well, we're going to Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, all these other streaming places, and YouTube. But even on those places, are we watching art house cinema, or are we still just watching the same things that are making money at the box office? Because according to Netflix, that's what they think is happening. Their CEO made the declaration just a few months ago saying, we're kind of done making small art house films, and we're going to focus on making films like Red Notice and have big explosions with big faces and draw as many people in as we can to stay alive and stay funded. Then you have Amazon, who's like, yeah, we'll still make art house films, we'll make fun dramas, we'll make comedies, we'll make everything, as long as people are willing to watch it. So then they'll release movies, but they won't actually release them. Take The Whale. Everywhere I go on the internet, there's hype for The Whale. Constantly. People showing clips of Brendan Fraser, is that how you say his name? He said something in an interview recently about how you say his name. I don't remember what it was. But you see clips of him crying, you see all sorts of things supporting him, and there's tons of hype for this movie. Well, it just got released, and it's only showing in 4 theaters in my state. There's been so much hype for this movie, yet I can't watch it unless I drive 4 or 5 hours in one direction. So it seems like major companies have decided that, hey, we can still make these movies, we just have to do really, really small releases, even if there's a bunch of hype for it. And then we'll put it on streaming platforms for rent, and we'll make our money that way. And so far, it worked. Haha. Just kidding. Netflix released Glass Onion for like a 1-week run. It made money, but it could have made more money. Actually, it made so much money that if they had done a regular theatrical run, they could have made an extra $40 or more million. I had friends, including myself, who really wanted to see it on the big screen, but couldn't due to scheduling conflicts and the fact that it still wasn't showing in that many theaters. So the only movies that make money are Marvel films, supposedly, but then you have films out of nowhere people really want to see, but then they won't show you those movies anyway. I genuinely don't know what's going on. I thought I understood everything, but then looking at it now on a paper, you got like conflicting ideas, or they're like, oh, well, we just won't put them out in theaters because they won't make money. And then when they don't put them out in theaters, they lose money. And I don't quite understand it. And I don't think they do either, and I think they're really scared about it. Both Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, and a bunch of other major directors have bashed Marvel and Disney and all these companies, saying they shouldn't be dominating the field. They should let other creators step in and try to tell stories that people want to hear. And Disney has pretty much ignored that for the most part. And even a lot of the actors of major Marvel films have said, well, these movies should exist, but they shouldn't be the only thing that exists. We should all work together on this. We're not really competition as much as we are employees or co-workers with each other. Tarantino went even as far as to say that now is worse than the 80s were for movies, and that the best 2 decades of movies were the 70s and the 90s, and from the 90s on, which it's 2022, that's a good chunk of time, has been really, really not pleasant. I don't think he can complain that much, because, you know, if it wasn't right now, if it was still the 90s, he wouldn't have wiki feet, you know what I'm saying? But what does this mean? What's going to happen to theaters in Hollywood? Well, I think you're going to have this back and forth for a long time, where you're going to have these huge movies get a bunch of hype, and then they'll get released, and they'll make a bunch of money. Then you'll have this huge movie, and there's no hype, and then it won't get released, or vice versa. And you're going to see this constant, it's experimenting, and it's never going to make a lot of sense. You're going to see YouTube, you're going to see Netflix, and all these people branching out into more ad-based streaming, where they make money just based on people watching things. Because if there's not a way for them to make their cash, then they're not going to make things. Listen, art killed business. We made art films, they didn't make money, then we lost money, and then business stepped in and said, we're gonna make big budgeted movies with explosions, and people watch those and make money, and now art's dead. So what's gonna happen? I think art's gonna make a comeback, and everybody's gonna lose money, but people are going to watch it anyway, and you're going to see a rise in ads, and we're going to come full circle back to original television, where everything was just advertisements everywhere. So what can you do to stop the horrors of all this? Well, the easiest thing you can do is go to the theater and watch more artistic films or dramas in general, things that aren't made by Disney or Marvel, or well, I guess they're the same thing, but you know what I mean. But if you don't want to spend money, the easiest thing you can do is go on YouTube or Vimeo or wherever and watch and support individual creators that are trying to make movies, short films, the whole jazz. There's a ton of short films out on the internet that are actually really good, but nobody watches them. Why? Well, they're short. They're not big grand movies with big faces on them. They don't grab your attention in the first 5 seconds. They don't have big intros with Mr. Beast being like, hey guys, in this video we did this and this and this. They don't have that. It's slower. There's beautiful shots and textures and actual acting and story that's rich, that makes you think about things. And that's hard. That's not fun, but it's worth it in the long run, because you might learn something about yourself, gain some insight, grow as a person, and that's more worthwhile than just having 90 seconds of dopamine. And if you're willing to do that, then you might have a new favorite movie come out, something that's really heartfelt but fun. A great example is Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. That was an old YouTube short film that came out a long time ago, and then recently this year it made it into a full-fledged movie. And it's my favorite film of probably the 2020s so far. And even better, and even another way, try to find filmmakers that are local to you. If you're in a small city or something, there's gotta be at least 1 or 2 people trying to make something. And you don't have to go on set or be in the film or anything, but you can like their posts. You can share them. You can leave a comment, something of support. And that alone is gonna be so much better than going to watch freaking Spider-Man 8. Or whatever the heck. Listen, I love Spider-Man, but at the end of the day, like, come here. We all know that the plot's gonna be. We all know what's gonna happen. So go support some filmmakers and have a good day. If you like the video, subscribe, please, and like. This is the second thing I've made so far, and I really liked it. It's been fun. I have a lot of random thoughts I want to rant about, and hopefully you found them engaging and interesting. But either way, please feel free to support, like I asked you to. And even if you don't like this video or something, but go like somebody else's, because a lot of people put a lot of work into things, and it's really good. I'll leave some links in the description of some short films and individual creators that I really like, that put a lot of work into their art but don't receive a lot of reward. So check them out if you want to, and enjoy the rest of your day.